Thank you for joining us at Community on Demand. Today's message is presented by Dan Greer. Dan holds a doctorate from Grace School of Theology and is the senior pastor here at Community Church. This message was recorded during a live Sunday morning service at Community. Let's listen in as Dan begins.
You know, in February of 2020, our unemployment rate was 3.5%, with 2.3 million people who were actually filing for unemployment, but 2.6 million who were actually unemployed. Then in April of 2020, you know what happened in April during COVID? Unemployment surged to 14.7%, with 21 million people who filed for unemployment, but 26 million people, or 23 million people, who were actually unemployed. And that was mostly caused by government shutdowns of businesses across the country and just shutting it down, and people could not work. However, let's go back to all of that. However, in November of 2023, just last month, we are back to 3.7% unemployment, with about 1.8 million claims being filed. But listen to this. But a staggering 6.3 million unemployed American workers. Do you know what that means? It means that people have just quit trying to get a job.
Exactly.
About 5 million people are they've lost hope. They've stopped trying. Now, if you think it's bad here in the United States, it's worse everywhere else. Let me give you some stats. In Italy is reporting 9.3% unemployment, Germany 5.7%, India 7.9%. All of that is nearly twice what we're experiencing. And globally, we are suffering with 5.8% unemployment rate, with a staggering 208 million workers across the world who were working and who are unemployed today. Now, you say, well, we kind of felt like some of that was going on. But what we don't understand is the psychological effect that unemployment has on people. According to the U.S. Office of Disease Prevention and Health Promotion, and let me just read this to you. Let me quote. It says, those who are unemployed report feelings of depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, demoralization, worry, and physical pain. It goes on to say, unemployed individuals tend to suffer more from stress-related illnesses. I think I'm still a little bit too hot. Do you think I'm still hot out there? You don't think I am? No. Maybe I'm just hot up here, huh? Okay, all right. These people, unemployed individuals, tend to suffer more from stress-related illnesses such as high blood pressure, stroke, heart attack, heart disease, and arthritis. According to a report that came out of the University of Massachusetts, high employment means it causes recruitment and retention difficulties, results in lost productivity, and it signals a coming recession. According to a 2021 Pew Research Center survey, around 56% of people who are unemployed report experiencing an increase in emotional or mental health conditions such as depression and anxiety. Bottom line, unemployment has a devastating impact on individuals, companies, and countries. Unemployment ain't no good, as Dr. Anderson was saying, okay? Gail and I struggled with unemployment when we were at Bible college, when we first got married. We had to, just be verbal for a moment, we had to frequent the food bank. That's pretty humbling. We had to go to Food Bank to get half-gallon cans of peanut butter and 5-pound blocks of cracked cheese. The Kraft processing plant was nearby, and that's where they stored it, so had plenty of it. We went to the day-old bread store and bought day-old bread for 9 cents a loaf. I mean, it was just getting ready to turn, it was just getting ready to grow some hair, And we went to the egg farm to purchase seconds, or I would say rejects, of eggs that didn't make the cut for about 10 cents a dozen. Our house was peanut butter jelly sandwiches, grilled cheese sandwiches, and scrambled eggs and toast. And we just rotated it every 3 days, I mean, it's pretty rough. And there were several times, Gayla had a part-time job working at the school, the college cafeteria. I had a full-time job looking for a job. I went down to get food stamps. And I said, we're really hungry, and I can just get a few food stamps, buy groceries for this week. I said, well, you got to fill out an application, you got to wait 30 days, you got to do this, you got to do that. That's how I started it. I don't want to get on the food stamp wagon. I just need help. And I remember falling across the bed at night. I'd come home, I'd fall across the bed. God, why? I'm surrendered to ministry. I want to give my life to you. And it's not working out. And oftentimes I thought, you know what? I just need to quit this college stuff, this ministry stuff, and go back to the oil field and work, make a little money. I'd go home for Christmas. All of my brothers would be driving Corvettes, and I'd be worried about going back and then having a grilled cheese sandwich, But unemployment is rough. It's difficult. Maybe you're here and you've never struggled with unemployment. Maybe you have, and just what I'm talking about. You experience this. I think all of us know someone who is unemployed and find that those folks are generally unmotivated, discouraged, depressed, dejected. Unemployment is devastating to our psyche. And so I think a lot of us realize and hope and pray that we never have to go down and enroll on the unemployment rolls. Hope we never get fired. But if you think being unemployed is bad now, just wait until Christ's coming kingdom on earth. Being unemployed then will be much worse. I just lost a lot of you, didn't I? You're thinking, what? Are you saying we're going to be working in the coming kingdom? Well, let me read a passage of Scripture to you, okay? Turn to Matthew chapter 19 and verse 27. Then Peter answered and said to him, that would be Jesus, see, we've left all and followed you. Therefore, what shall we have? So Jesus said to them, assuredly, I say to you that in the regeneration, when the Son of Man sits on his throne of his glory, you who have followed me will also sit on the 12 thrones, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. Let me give you the context of here. The rich young ruler had just come by for an interview and said, what will it take for me to inherit eternal life? And he's basically wanting to join his leadership team. And Jesus just said, go sell everything you have, give it to the poor, come follow me. And the guy said, what? And he walked away sadly. And then Peter comes to him and says, well, what about us, Lord? We sold everything. We got rid of everything. We're following you. What about us? What will we have? Implying the coming kingdom. And you know what Jesus says? A great job. You guys are going to be ruling over the 12 tribes of Israel. Isn't that excited? You're going to have you're going to get right there. A great job. By the way, being a ruler or a leader or a manager, that's not easy. I mean, there's work to it. And anyone that understands the aspects of the kingdom of heaven understands that not only will we have authority, we'll have responsibility for 1,000 years. And during that 1,000 years, I want a good job. I want a great job. And that's what he's telling Peter here, you see. And just after he tells this to Peter and answers a great job, he will go into a parable that is called the parable of the workers or the parable of the laborers, if you have headings in your Bible. And in that parable, we will see three things. We will see that there's a comparison, a crisis, and a complaint as Jesus teaches this parable about workers, a parable about laborers. So let's dig into it there in Matthew chapter 20, verse 1, just the next chapter down. And first of all, we see that there's a comparison. Let's read. For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire laborers, watch this, for his vineyard. Jesus compares the kingdom of heaven on earth like a landowner who owns a vineyard. I like that. In my mind's eye, here's what I see. Napa Valley. Tuscany Village. I begin to visualize, fields and rows of grapevines. A quaint little tasting room. A wine cellar. A production facility. I begin to see all these cool things that go along with a vineyard. Here the word landowner is oikidespotes, which means owner or master of a large house that usually includes family, servants, and workers. And so what he's saying here is that the kingdom of heaven is going to be like a busy villa with a vineyard, with family members and workers all around. There's things that are going to be going on in the kingdom of heaven that has a lot of productivity, and it's going to be wonderful. And again, it's with family members, workers, people that are working together in the vineyard. Over in Romans chapter 8, verse 16 through 17, it talks to us a little bit about some of the things in the future. It says, the Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of God. If you're a Christian today, you're a child of God. And if children, then heirs. Heirs of God and joint heirs with Jesus Christ. You see, not only does this depict us as workers in the villa, it depicts us as one of the family members, one of the heirs to this landowner's vineyard. According to stats, the average winery in the United States employs about 9.5 workers. And oftentimes, it's a lot of family that are part of the workers. Kids work cheap, that's the whole thing. However, during harvest time, most wineries must double or triple their workforce with grape pickers and bucket runners in order to get the harvest in. In this parable, Jesus compares the kingdom of heaven to a vineyard and a villa. Jesus is the landowner, and we are both joint heirs, his family, and laborers in his vineyard. So there's a lot that he's throwing into this parable and comparing it to the kingdom of heaven. I really like the comparison here. I've often thought, man, how much would it cost to buy a vineyard with a villa? About $100 million probably, Yeah. So there's a comparison here. There's also a crisis going on that we begin to see unfolding here. Look down at verse number 2. Now, when he had agreed with his laborers for a denarius, a day, he sent them into the vineyards. And when he went out about the third hour and saw others standing idle, that would be the unemployed, in the marketplace, he said to them, you also go into the vineyard, and whatever's right, I'll pay you. And so they went. The unemployed people of the first century most likely gathered at a local labor pool somewhere in the marketplace. It says it's in the marketplace here, in hopes of employment, especially in a vineyard during grape season. That's what they're good at. That's what they want to. The unemployed are probably at the marketplace. We see it at the marketplace, probably in a labor pool, and that they're waiting to work. And so the landowner comes down to hire at 6 o'clock in the morning, then at 9 o'clock, that's the third hour. And something that you have to understand about the grape harvest season, it's in late September. Now, if you're out in California, even here in late September, it's hot. It's the hottest in October. And the thing about grapes is they have to be picked at the perfect time for the best product. You pick them too early, it's going to be bitter. Pick them too late, it's not going to taste right. So there's a 40 to 60 day period where the landowner must go out every day and look at the grapes to see if it's the perfect time. He never knows. Will it be the second day, the third day, the 40th day, or the 59th day? But when he goes out and looks, and there is this little wax film that's around the grapes, he says, it's time. And he runs to the marketplace in a crisis and begins to hire laborers. And that's what he's doing here. Let me continue verse 5. And again, he went out the 6th hour and the 9th hour, and he did likewise. And about the 11th hour, he went out and found others standing idle. And he said to them, why have you been standing here all day? And they said to him, because no one hired us. So he said to them, you also go into the vineyard, and whatever is right, I will pay you. So the owner pays a day's wage and goes to the labor pool at 6 a.m., 9 a.m., 12 noon, 3 p.m., 5 p.m. to continually hire workers, because what he's doing, he's running back and he's saying, we're not moving fast enough. We're not going to get it all in. I need more workers. And he's running back and forth to the field trying to get people in because he's in a crisis, folks. We are in a crisis today. And the harvest field of the Lord. Jesus told his disciples in Samaria, look out and see something. In Matthew 9, 37 through 38, he said, the harvest truly is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore pray that the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers to the harvest. Do you see the panic here? Do you see the crisis? Can you see this landowner running back and forth? I'm not going to get it in. More laborers, not going to get it in. More laborers, all the way up to 5 o'clock, last hour. So there's this comparison, the crisis, but then there rises a complaint. Look at verse 8. So when evening came, the owner of the vineyard said to the steward, probably a family member, call the laborers and give them their wage, beginning with the last, going to the first. And when they came, who were hired at the 11th hour, that'd be 5 o'clock, they each received a denarius. But when the first came, the one that hired at 6 o'clock in the morning, supposing that they would receive more, they likewise received a denarius, a day's wage. And when they had received it, they complained against the landowner, saying, these last men have worked only 1 hour, and you made them equal to us who have borne the burden of the heat of the day. Now, wait a minute. Let's go back to the morning. These workers, these laborers, they were desperately unemployed. Their self-esteem was in the gutter. Their families were hungry. They needed money. And they were glad when that vineyard owner come walking up to them and said, would you like to work in my vineyard today? I'll pay you a denarius. Yes, absolutely. You know where it is. Get on down there. They were excited. But when they saw someone else being benefited, they started complaining. Now they have funds to feed their family. But rather than being thankful, they're complaining about and to the owner. This is typical. This is typical of us today. Christ saves us, blesses us, employs us in ministry, gives us purpose. But rather than being joyful and thankful and fulfilled, we tend to complain when it's time for the harvest. Well, you're favoring that one over there, and you didn't let me do that, and well, I don't. We complain about the stupidest things. We forget that He has saved us and placed us into His harvest. The kingdom of heaven is like a landowner's vineyard and villa that is ready for the harvest. And many believers who are spiritually unemployed, they're saved, they're just not serving, and they're unfulfilled. So what must we do to get off the kingdom unemployment rolls, both now and the kingdom to come on earth? What do we do? Let me suggest 3 things, and then we're done. Number 1, we must hear His call for workers. Throughout this parable, He's calling for workers. He went out early in the morning, verse number 1, to hire workers, laborers. Verse number 2, He agreed with the laborers for a pretty good chunk of money. Verse number 8, He called the laborers, the workers, to give them their wages. One of the first things that Jesus did when He began His ministry is He began to call laborers into the field. He called Andrew, then Peter, then the 12 disciples. He called workers to His field to work in His field. In Matthew chapter 9, let me give this to you again. He tells us to work. He tells us to pray that He could go out and hire more workers. Then He said to His disciples that harvest is truly plentiful. It's ready. Laborers are few. Therefore pray that the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into His field. Now here's the thing. Working is hard. It's not easy. Those guys didn't decide. They didn't say, well, I'm going to go down to the field today and work a little bit. Maybe I'll sit over in the lawn chair and in the shade and eat me a few of the grapes that I picked. No, they knew that it was going to be hot. They knew they were going to have to work. They knew it was going to be difficult. Insects. A few years ago, they knew that they'd probably run into trouble from other people. A few years ago, I was going through a really difficult time. In fact, it was a time when a group of very, very evil people were persecuting my wife and me. And, you don't mess with my family. You know what I'm saying? And it was blatant. It was horrible. If you knew, you'd say, oh, no. And, one was an 8-time convicted child molester wearing one of those bands. And the other one had been arrested for solicitation. And they were trying to get into a church, and we caught them. And then they started persecuting. And it got really, really bad. And I struggled. I struggled with anger. I struggled with combative ideas. I was constantly going and praying, Lord, calm me down. And I met with Dave and Betty several times, and I've just asked them, I said, you got to pray for me. I'm angry. I really want to do things that Christians don't do. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. All of you guys are really nice and kind and gentle. I know nobody has those faults, just the pastor, And and so one day we're praying, and I said, look, please pray for me. I don't want you to pray for them. Pray for me. Pray that God would help me with my attitude and just calm me down right now. And before they prayed, Betty looked over at me, and she's not here, so I can talk about her today, okay? Betty looked over at me. She's probably watching this right now. Betty looked over at me, and she said, Dan, maybe what God is doing is he has got you in training for the kingdom. Maybe things are going to be a little more difficult there. Your job's going to be a lot tougher than it is now. Maybe this is on-the-job training for you right now. Never thought of that before. The things that we suffer and go through, the heat of the day and the labor in the field, is for us to be strong so that when we come into his kingdom, we're ready for whatever responsibility that he's going to give us. Some of you may be government officials over particular places. Some of you may be teaching children. You're going to be working in the coming kingdom. We are his laborers. We are his fellow laborers. We're not just going to have a Hawaiian vacation up there. Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's the difference. A lot of people don't realize that. For 1,000 years in the kingdom of Christ, we will be ruling and reigning and being judges with him. I love Matthew chapter 25, verse 21. His Lord said unto him, well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I will make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of the Lord. Jesus is calling us to be workers in his vineyard, to be his heirs. While many believers sit idle, unemployed now, we must hear that call for workers and visualize this life as training for a great job in his coming kingdom. We must hear his call for workers. Secondly, we must see his compassionate wish. Look at verse 14. Jesus speaking or implying himself, I wish, this is the landowner who is compared to Jesus, I wish to give to the last man the same as you. He's talking to those complainers. Is it not lawful for me to do what I wish with my own things? Let me do some calculations for you. The work day in the vineyard was from 6 to 6. They didn't get a 8-hour work day. It was a 12-hour work day. The amount that he's going to pay them is a denarius. That would be about $16.50 an hour, a day's wage. So, $150, $200. So that last worker that he brought in gets $16.50. That first worker, $150. They have the same issues. Their families are hungry. They're demoralized. And what he's saying here, what this owner is, he watches these workers work rigorously in the hot August sun to get his harvest in. And so he has compassion and empathy and care and sensitivity and concern for them, all of them, and their families. So he wants to encourage them and gives them more than they expected. And when he gives some more than they expected, others that agreed begin to grumble. Several times in the book of Matthew, it says, he had compassion on them. We must see his compassion on us as his workers. We must demonstrate the same kind of compassion on fellow workers. People are hurting today. They need our care. They need our compassion. That's why we made one of our bylines, a place where people care. None of us are perfect. All of us are sinners. We all make mistakes. But rather than criticize one another for their lack of perfection, we've got to see his compassion and demonstrate his compassion toward people that are just about to quit. They can't make it another step. We must be gentle and compassionate and sensitive as he was. We must hear his call for workers. We must see his compassionate wish. And lastly, we must surrender as his committed workforce. Verse 15. Jesus is answering this complainer. And he says, is your eye evil because I am good? Let me say that again. Is your eye evil because I am good? Then he says something that a lot of us probably don't like very much. He says, so the last will be first, and the first will be last, for many are called, but few chosen. I want to make a statement. Most American Christians do not see themselves as a part of God's workforce. Most American Christians see themselves as God's welfare recipients and his customers. They come to church to get something, not give something. It would change the face of the earth if we could understand this. This kind of attitude in the parable gave some of those workers who didn't get what they expected the evil eye. What do you think about the evil eye? Do you know how that translates? This word evil translates poneros, where we get our word pornography. Yuck. Do you have a pornographic eye? I mean, that's an evil eye. Did you read this? Many are called, but few are chosen. That's not a salvific statement. That is not a call to salvation. That is a call to service. He's calling us to serve. Let me demonstrate this to you, okay? Braveheart, something like that. There's a crisis. There's a need. And here are loyalists. And he draws a line. He says, we've got to go into battle. I'm calling you. Come on and step over the line. And if you step over the line, he said, you're the ones I'm choosing. It's a call to service, not salvation. A lot of people get this mixed up in their Calvinistic reformed ways out there. That's not what it's saying here. It's a call to serve. So as workers, as heirs, we must surrender as God's workforce to get the harvest in, because we're coming down to the end of the age. Every pastor on this pastoral team here has been preaching that. Rich is teaching it from his Sunday school class. We're proclaiming that we're in the last days. We're coming down to the end of the age. We've got to get the harvest in. It is ready. That's the call. Hey, change subject for a moment. Did you guys enjoy Tim Hale last Sunday night? You know? Go ahead. Tim, if you're watching this, you just got to know. I don't know of any banquet singer that ever got a standing ovation at our church here. I looked around and said, what's going on? That was a first. I told you a little bit about, I mentioned that we've had a connection for many, many years, that Tim was born at the same hospital as my Tim. I've got a Tim, his father has Tim, born at the same hospital there in Springfield, Missouri, while we were going to Bible college. And we went our way. We worked at youth departments and stuff. And then Tim's parents and Gayla and I ended up at the same church. Many, many years later, our kids were now like junior high and elementary kids. And Russ, that's Tim's dad, Russ was the youth director of that church, and I was the college career director, and so we did a lot of stuff together. And now I'm going to give you the backstory. I'm going to give you the under part of the quilt, so that you can know the backstory. You see, for decades, while Tim was growing up, I spent time chasing him all over the country, trying to keep him in church. Let me tell you some stories. This is Tell It on Tim Day, okay? I remember Tim and Cindy's his wife, an innocent, wonderful, blue-eyed girl that she never has done anything wrong. Tim's a prankster. And I remember when they were like in junior high and high school, taking them to youth camp. August, Prude Ranch, Davis Mountains, 105 degrees. Sleeping in a hard bunk. Chasing that, sleeping in a bunk where about 30 or 40 other boys who do not like to take baths, who have been wrestling with a greased pig all day, literally trying to do all those activities, and then come into that room. It's like throwing a dirty sock right on your nose, and gagging and stuff, trying to get them in the shower, trying to get them cleaned up. And then sleeping on that bed at the door to keep them from sneaking out at night. They did those kinds of things. If you've gone to youth camp, you know they do those kinds of things. I remember the senior high, here's a good one. I remember when he got his driver's license. And he and a lot of boys his age were in the car driving around Loop 250 up on North Midland area. And they had this great idea. Just got his driver's license. They're going to drive down the loop, and they have these eggs in their car, and they would open the window on three sides, and they would throw the eggs up in the air and speed off, and the eggs would drop on the cars behind them, and the people were like, where are they? What's going on? It just so happened, by God's will, I was pulling on Loop 250 at the same time. I drove up, I said, I know that car, I know those boys, what are they doing? And I pulled up right next to them and pushed my window that went down, and I'm looking over at Tim Hill driving the car. And they'd been busted. And he got busted really bad later when I told his dad, Yeah, I remember the lock-in. The lock-in. What we try to do is an alternative Christmas, alternative senior activity when all the other kids want to stay out all night and go and do things they're not supposed to do. We had a lock-in. We had this big fitness center. And I remember specifically telling him that he could not leave. If you leave, if you and Sandy leave, I'm going to call your mom and dad. I'm going to call her mom and dad. They're going to be out looking for you. I remember specifically walking outside and another boy flirting with Cindy, and they were going to duke it out. I said, you're not going to duke it out. We're Christians. Go jump in the pool. Cool down. I remember those things. I remember loading him up with 70 other kids and going to California to try to get him enrolled in a Bible college out there that would straighten him out. I thought, man, I've run out of ideas here. And I go up to the pier on Huntington Pier, and I see him there participating in a love offering. It wasn't for me. He was participating in an offering to make a collection to dare his brother that he bragged about, to dare his brother to jump off the pier during spring break at Huntington Beach in the icy waters of the Pacific Ocean and swim back to shore. What are you doing, guys? I remember loading a bunch of the kids up and going up to not Snow Valley, it's one of the ski resorts up in Denver, which we did every year. I remember having to drive the bus and swap off driving the bus. There's a commotion going on in the back. I look around, all I can see is fists in the air and kicking and stuff, and I run back there and start grabbing the boys and pulling them off. Guess who I pulled off and looked at Tim Hale in a fight on the bus. So last Sunday night, while you guys were giving him a standing ovation, while you think, oh, he's such a great singer. He's planting a church. 464 people at church last Sunday. While you were just thinking those sweet thoughts, I was thinking, God, that's a miracle. And I'm asking, do I get 464 denarius in the coming kingdom? What am I saying, guys? We're his laborers. We're his workers. We don't know how many Tim Hales that we have back there in the room right now. A couple of weeks we're going to be moving over here. You knew I'd get down to this, didn't you? We're in a crisis. We're in a panic. The harvest is about to come in. The wax is on the grapes. We have children that are being brainwashed, confused, taught things that are not true, bullied, everything that you can think of. We are the ones, we are the workers, we are the laborers. When Peter asked Jesus, what do you have for us? Jesus answered, I've got a great job for you in the coming kingdom. So the question is, do you want a great job in the coming kingdom? Do you want to stay on this, or do you want to stay on the kingdom's welfare and unemployment roll? Let me encourage you to join him, join his workforce, get well trained, do a good job for his coming kingdom. Do you trust him? Do you know he's calling? Do you see his compassion? Will you make a commitment to his workforce? Would you pray?
On behalf of Pastor Dan and the folks at Community, thank you for joining us today at Community on Demand. Feel free to share this link with others, and please know you are always welcome to be our guest during a live service any Sunday morning at our campus in The Woodlands, Texas. For more information, just click on the link www.cbcwoodlands.org. I hope you will again join us at Community on Demand.